Hello, welcome to the Fusion Artist Studio. My name is Ed Breen, and the Fusion Arts Alliance each week brings you an opportunity to listen to an interview with an artist from the Marion or Grant County area. We try to get artists of all varieties, performing artists, visual artists, artists doing things that you may not have considered to be an art form before. Today we have a special treat for you. We have the folks from CSA, Shelly Inskeep and Katie Perez. Welcome to the Fusion Artist Studio, ladies.
Thank you.
Let's start at the beginning. We'll start with Katie. Katie, you came into the world as Katie Fenimore, and the next day you started organizing things, being disruptive as much as possible.
Pretty much, yeah.
And you have spent your life doing that successfully. That is your contribution to art in Marion.
That's probably correct. Yeah, I would call myself more of not an artist. I'm an arts advocate. I do not come with the talent that Shelly and all of the faculty at CSA and the students have. There are students that are 3 that have probably more artistic talent in their pinky than I do. But I grew up with the arts as a major part of my life. My grandparents and my parents always ensured that we experienced the arts, the performing arts. I have memories of being very young, heading to the Butler Ballet, and that was just the beginning. Seeing theatrical productions, going with my grandmother, the Marion Philharmonic Orchestra, until she passed. And my parents' involvement with Marion Civic Theater. My dad was the president of that board at the time that they acquired the downtown building. So as somebody who has just invested a lot of time in this community in a volunteer capacity, and as a parent who was involved at CSA, for me, I ended up in this role as executive director, as an arts advocate instead of more of the artistic role.
Born and reared in Marion, went to Marion High School, and about 48 hours after you graduated, you ran for the school board and got elected to the school board.
I was 28 when I first was elected to the school board, served almost 10 years on the Marion School Board, yeah, I have been involved in local political campaigns. I have been on many local boards in the community and spent a lot of time fundraising in 2012 for a political campaign that sort of opened my experience to prepare me for an opportunity that I ended up with here at CSA.
You're the business side, the management side of this. Shelly, you are the creative side. Let's talk about how you got to this point. Are you from Marion originally?
Sure. Yes, I was born and raised in Grant County. I graduated from Eastbrook High School. I grew up dancing. I lived every night in the dance studio as a child all the way through high school. I went on to major in dance management at Oklahoma City University, and then came back home and worked at a local dance studio for several years until I began working at the Community School of the Arts in 2008.
Okay. And the CSA, Community School of the Arts, is now you're in your 26th year.
We celebrated 25 years 4 years ago, but we're in.
Oh my God, was that long ago?
Yes, so we earned 20 years, I'm sorry, 20 years, 4 years ago, but we are in our 25th school year right now.
25th year now. Okay.
25th school year right now.
Which is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Started in the basement of the First Christian Church.
That's correct.
West of downtown Marion, has been in this building for, 15 years?
Since 2009.
Oh, 11 years now. Okay.
Found itself at the Center Mall for several years before it, which is now the Boston Health Center, before it landed in this building.
That's right. Student enrollment at this point is how many young folks?
We normally average about 400 students in a year. We have many students who come in and out who maybe take guest artist classes and stuff that probably take us to a closer of a 500 student impact every year. This year with COVID-19, of course,
Sure.
Our numbers are less than that.
What has COVID done?
I would say that we've taken about a 20% hit in our
in
enrollment numbers.
number of young people who are enrolled.
That's correct.
Katie, question for you. What's it done to you financially?
A major impact to us financially that we can measure right now was what we faced following March 12th. You know, Thursday evening, March 12th, the governor spoke on what they were going to allow the schools to do. We looked at each other, and we both kind of knew we may not be back. And then we weren't, you know, and very quickly we had to halt classes. We waited to make decisions based on decisions that were being led by state, local leaders. Ultimately had to cancel, postpone Matilda to this coming spring, our large theatrical production that was scheduled. We had to cancel our end of the year showcase recital and performance programs, and we had to cancel classes, and we had to cancel classes from March 12th through the end of the school year. And that resulted in what looks like about a loss of $218,000 in income for us. So that was a pretty major hit, and we were able to continue to pay our staff and our full-time faculty throughout that entire process. We were able to secure PPP, and that was helpful. And
That's from the federal program.
CARES Act. And while Shelly was working diligently to create classes that students could take online for free via Zoom at the time, I was frantically writing requests for funding all over the place. And so we were able to open back up this summer. We returned to the office in May, end of May, just after Memorial Day, and it was like walking into something that was really interesting. Every show that was in process, all of the costumes that had been ordered for the recital, everything was just as we had left it. And it was very eerie to come back into this large building that is typically, and even today, full of life. And to come back to a place where all of that was just halted. And to then go, okay, we have to put all of that away, and let's start to plan for what comes next. We spent the summer
Kind of like
recreating the
walking
plan.
into Pompeii after the volcano.
Yeah.
Absolutely, that is very much what it was like. That's how Shelly describes it. Very similar to that, you know.
Yeah, we just produced our 21st theater company show this last week, and it was the first time in all of those shows that we actually packed up an entire show and put it away before we were able to actually perform it. It was bizarre.
Talk a little bit about the emphasis. You have a performing background. You bring the business background to it. What drives the course offerings here? Is it the demand from the students? Is it the offerings that you choose to advance? How does it work?
I think that it's kind of a little bit of both. I think that the demand from students plus the availability of teaching artists are really what determine what classes we're offering. Sometimes we have teachers available to teach and not an interest from students, and vice versa. So we try to balance that as much as we can. So we try to make sure that there are as many opportunities for different students as possible. Currently, our dance department and our theater department are the larger of our 4 departments, and mostly that is because of both demand and availability of faculty.
Okay. So I presume, forever looking for people who want to participate, have the qualifications and background that want to teach at CSA.
Absolutely, yeah. If we have a qualified teacher who wants to offer a class, we will find a way to make it available and do all we can to make sure that those classes are successful and filled with students.
What kinds of people are you looking for right now? What skill sets would you like to have walk in the door?
Well, we're always looking for visual artists who are interested in teaching visual arts classes. Right now, that is one of our smaller departments. We have a pretty robust pottery program, but as far as teachers who are teaching painting, anything 2D art,
Two-dimensional art
is definitely our smaller department. So we're always looking for teachers who want to do that, as well as musicians. We're always looking for teachers who want to teach vocal classes. We have a high demand for private vocal lessons, and we have a really hard time filling all of those because we just have limited teacher availability, as well as anyone who's teaching instruments and things like that. That is something that we definitely have an interest in, that sometimes we have to turn people away depending on what availability we have with teachers.
Have you had groups of people who they want whatever the specific art form is, and you simply have not been able to find an instructor?
I sometimes yes. I think what sometimes we find is the challenge is lining up all of the stars aligning at the same time. So sometimes we will have an instructor, and then all of a sudden those 5 students that wanted to take that class last year are suddenly not there anymore, and then and vice versa. So that sometimes it's more of the stars not aligning as much as it is like having to specifically turn people away. But we definitely have had students who say, hey, do you offer this class? And we have to say, not this semester, we don't have a teacher right now. That does happen, but not normally in a large group.
I know that you have a number of not only out of town, but out of county students. You have students who come from Fort Wayne, from Muncie, primarily for dance and theater.
It's pretty much even with both theater and dance for our out of town.
Okay.
And that we've seen that grow.
Right.
That almost has like flopped. So when we began together in these roles, there was more dance students probably coming from out of town to be part of that program. As we've grown that theater program, as they developed that program and that theater company has grown, slowly that number has increased heavily, and we've seen students from Muncie, Fort Wayne, Wabash, and surrounding areas come realize that this is the place they're going to get that high-level pre-professional theater training.
Here at home, tell me what the relationship is between CSA and Marion Community Schools. Are you doing things for which young people can get credit at Marion High School?
Yes, so we have been in partnership with Marion Community Schools since this is our 6th school year, I believe. That allows students at Marion Community Schools to do something that they're doing right now because of COVID-19, but were never capable of doing before, where they could take many of their classes from Marion High School virtually.
Okay.
Or they could do a hybrid schedule. So when we were talking about that 6 years ago, people were looking at us like we were talking about something that was a totally foreign concept. And here now we are seeing it happen all over the country because of the circumstances we're in. So these students are taking a class or classes at Marion High School, as well as the remainder of their classes online. They're able to receive credit for some of the classes that they're taking here towards their degree. And then they are able to take unlimited courses here as part of that program. And depending on the level that they participate, they can also take private lessons in that. It has allowed for many of those students that are out of town students, honestly.
That was my next question.
Yeah, it has
the
allowed
surrounding school districts?
Yeah, it has allowed for in the county, but also many outside of the county.
Okay.
To really do the level of pre-professional training that's expected, that they have created. They are here 6+ days a week. And they're here often from 4 p.m. until 9:30 at night. For those out-of-town folks, that has really opened up opportunity for them to expand what they can do here at CSA. And as well for many of those here in our community that may be, financially unable to take unlimited classes at CSA, but this has provided an opportunity for that to be a little easier to do and still pursue that high school degree.
So you have students from out of county, from several counties. Does the same hold true with faculty? Are you recruiting faculty from out of county?
Yes, we do have. Our dance department chair right now. She lives in Muncie. We've had teachers from Fort Wayne, from Indianapolis. Many of them are local and are from here, but many of them come from out of the county.
Okay. I know at one time you had a significant scholarship program that went away because the people who were funding the scholarship moved their business to Indianapolis, and that's where it ended. Have you been able to generate the kinds of scholarship money that you need to not only match that, but maybe surpass that in the years since then?
What we did is we transitioned all of our a couple of different event-specific fundraising events into one fundraising event, and the proceeds from that go towards scholarships. One of the things that Shelly and I realized when we started to sit down and dig through those scholarships is there were quite a few students when it was that large sum of money that was donated to CSA. There were quite a few students that were receiving 100% scholarships. There were many students receiving quite a bit of their tuition for free. And so we created a new way to offer those scholarships that was more of a scale of dollars that could be awarded to them based on the income in their family's home. But while still making that possible for those, not just those families living in the highest level of poverty, but also those asset limited families, those families that are, maybe just 1 or 2 paychecks away from things really crumbling and CSA being the last thing that they were able to do, right? And that fundraiser has successfully allowed us to continue to offer those scholarships.
And that's the auction.
And that's the auction, Ignite.
And I would say that the Arts Academy programming also kind of filled in some of the gaps for that, because a lot of those students who were the pre-professional students who could afford to be at CSA but couldn't necessarily afford to be at CSA 6 days a week were then able to take advantage of the discounting that the Arts Academy makes possible too. So that really helped to fill in that gap.
One of the things that we try to do in these discussions is talk about what artists are doing for the community, and the obverse of that is what can the community do for the arts. You're giving a lot to the community, both creatively and in terms of administration. What do you need at this point from the community that would make this a stronger program than it is now as you head into your next 25 years?
I think one of the biggest things the community can do can just be to support the programming that's happening. We do a lot of performances and things that are available to the public, and if the public supported that, it makes it easier for us to continue that programming.
Buy tickets to the shows.
Buy tickets to the shows and come to the events that we have and things like that. One of the things that we feel strongly about is that we have the student performance series that we do, where we do every show that we do for free for local school-aged children. And one of the major goals of that program, in addition to just being a really great opportunity for these kids to experience theater and theatrical dance, is for us to set the foundation for a community that appreciates and loves the arts. And we realize that we're probably not going to be around in these roles to see the fruits of that labor, but that our ultimate goal is to create a community that we grew up with as children in Grant County, where it was such a thriving arts community, and try to realize that maybe has to start from the bottom up. And so we're hoping that eventually 20 years from now means that there's a lot of adults in Grant County that take their children to every theatrical performance in town. But in the meantime, the community right now can contribute in that way.
Yeah, one of the things that I think is really interesting is those students that are in 7th grade this year in Grant County have had the opportunity to experience live theater, theatrical dance 5 times. They would have been able to see that 6 times, but the end of the season happened the way that it did. And we've said all along in these roles together that everything that we're doing is a marathon, it's not a sprint. I think recovery from COVID-19's impact is going to be a marathon and not a sprint. Mm-hmm. But you cannot help, as somebody who grew up blessed enough to have had the opportunity to experience live theater and theatrical dance, and have people who invested in that for me as a child, and to have the love and the passion that I do for it, and to have never been capable of doing it myself on stage, I cannot help but believe that we are producing what will eventually be a community of arts consumers that helps all of us in this community to be more successful. Ultimately, you start to see things happen around you and more people participating in those things. We did the Chalk the Block event this year, and when we first started in these roles, we would do things like that and no one would come. I teased one of the moms that came because she's one of those families at CSA that's been here the entire time we've been doing this together, and they're in it for the long haul, And she showed up and she said, I can't believe how many people are here. And I said, you know, I kind of thought it might be just you and I, because she's always there for those things. But we were able to see the entire block full of people participating in just creating art on the sidewalks with sticks of chalk, you know? And last weekend, there was street art happening in this community. And
There was.
I came downtown to pick up my child from his rehearsal at CSA, and typically on a Saturday when there's not a farmer's market happening, on a Saturday at 2:00 in the afternoon, there's traffic on one side of the square, and it's ours, and it's because parents are lining up to pick kids up from their rehearsals, whether that's their dance company rehearsals or their theater company rehearsals. And I couldn't get a place to park, but clear down the street because it was full of people coming to participate in art that was happening downtown. And so we may not see that, as Shelly said, we may not see the fruits of our labor, but we have to believe that if we continue to do what we're doing and folks participate in that programming, that we are growing a base of arts supporters in this community. And I think we can all say that we're an arts community till we're blue in the face, right? There's lots of arts happening here. But if people aren't participating in it, what are we doing it for? And we continue to see that grow, and we've seen that grow over the last 6 years to a point where the very first show we ever did, it was Little Shop of Horrors was the first theatrical production. We sold, 150, 200 tickets maybe, right? And now we are selling that many, pre-COVID, we are selling that many tickets at least every performance of the weekend, you know? And so we're starting to, and those are not just parents, those are folks just coming out to see a CSA show. We've got people that come every single show because they just want to see what we're doing, and that is what the community can continue to do, is support all of the arts.
So maybe as a benediction, what we want to see eventually is traffic on all sides of the square on Saturday afternoon.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And every evening. We say that all the time, you know, I mean, you can often pull up in the evening and not find a spot on this side of the square. We want to see it be that way. A thriving downtown and a thriving arts community is a thriving CSA.
Absolutely.
Shelly Inskeep, Katie Perez, on behalf of the Fusion Arts Alliance, we wish you well at CSA, and we thank you for your participation today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be back with another artist next week. Stay tuned.